Hey all, it's Doug again. We've made it to the crater rim. Well, some people make it to the crater rim and you know what they do? Head back down to the car. We're not doing that. We're going to enjoy what we've accomplished. There's a lot to see up here. There's a lot of gorgeous views, plus some fun stuff. So let's go do that. I wanted to thank you very much for coming today. I hope you've had a good show. I hope that you'll enjoy our third leg of South Sister. South Sister Summit. There's another thing I always like to talk about. I get up there. South Sister is an active volcano. And people ask me a lot of times, they go, Doug, you're climbing up onto the top of an active volcano. What are you going to do if it erupts? And the answer is really quite simple. Die. Well, I tell people that very rarely. I used to tell people, no, it never happens that volcanoes just go up like that. But then we heard about that one, I believe it was in Australia recently, that just went off and sadly a bunch of people got killed. But usually, almost always, your volcano is going to give you quite a bit of warning before it erupts. Mount Lassen did 100 years ago, and of course, back in 1980, Mount St. Helens gave... Anybody know how long a warning Mount St. Helens gave before it finally erupted? It was 2 months. It started expanding. The flanks started getting bigger by 5 feet a day. Can you imagine? Think 5 feet right now and say, it was blowing up like a balloon ready to pop. So they give a lot of warning. Now, the thing we talked about is we're up here at the top. You want to go straight across this ice field, or do you want to go along the crater rim? The ice field is probably okay, but, I don't know what's underneath it. So I think what we'll do is we'll go along the right. We'll go along the crater rim and get to the far point, which is the true summit, and then we'll head back when we come home. We'll head back across the big ice field. So let's go. And that's what it's like. Now, I got to tell you, there was kind of a little trail. You can see it there over on the left that people had worn out over many, many people climbing up over this. And the one thing I can tell you for sure, trail or not, we are staying on the left side of that ridge because look what you are dealing with if you're on the right-hand side. That's the quick way down to the bottom. As I was going, you look over there on the right. You look at where the big snow ice field ends. It looks like it drops off all of a sudden. That's right where we came up. And we've wandered around this crater rim, and I took a picture looking back, not because I wanted to see Mount Bachelor out there, the snow-covered one. It was because of this little dog in the foreground, because I admired him so much. He's carrying all his own weight. He's got his own little backpack. He's got his water. He's got everything, and he's doing it all himself. And I wanted to introduce him to my dog, because my dog would never do anything like that. My dog would go and he'd say, I'm not carrying anything. It's not part of my contract. So I was pretty impressed with this little guy. Then, guess who I saw? You're right, it was Thornton, and Thornton decided to run across the big ice field. There's his two owners. I have to give them a nice, I don't know if commendation is not the right word, but I really appreciate it. They took good care of their dog, and you don't always see that. Sometimes people don't appreciate it with the nice dog they have, and these people took very, very nice care of Thornton. I thought that was really nice. And Thornton was just having a blast. In fact, he was having such a blast, he got completely out of control and he wiped out. Right there, he went head first into the ice. He wasn't hurt at all. He popped back up and went running around again. So it was kind of neat to see somebody having that much fun. Also, to see somebody have that much energy at this point. So we've made it to True Summit. True Summit is directly across from us right now. It is the highest point on the horizon, True Summit. And I get over there and I look off for the side of the volcano, and I'm looking roughly northeast right now. And I look down, and that's a long... I don't want to even think about taking another step. But people go and they might look and they say, Doug, you're still pretty close to the edge. And I'm a safe distance from the edge. The one thing I don't have to worry about this rock breaking off. This lava is super, super hard, and it is super, super firm. So as long as you have good footing and you feel like that, you're safe. It's not going to break off and dump you down. But You look out there, all that green, dark green fuzz, that's forest. That's how high up we are. The thing I thought was kind of neat is you look straight down, right in the heart of the picture, there's a lake. But this lake has the wrong color. I don't know what color you want to call that. It kind of looks kind of like an olive almost. I don't know. Brownish olive. And the only reason I can think it got that funny color is I'm guessing some kind of unusual silt, some kind of unusual compound, something came down off this volcano, got in that lake, and has given it the fascinating color it has. And then we look to the north, and we see this spectacular Cascade Mountain range. And the one right in the foreground, that's Middle Sister. The one just to the right, in front of us, North Sister. But then you look, and it looks like they're almost glued together. Just a hair to the left, in the far distance to the left of North Sister, is Mount Jefferson. Jefferson is the second tallest volcano in Oregon, but it is a very difficult guy to climb. I tried to climb it once, and it sent me back down. I have to try it again sometime in the future. And then in the distance to the right of North Sister, way in the distance you see a white one. That is the tallest volcano in all of Oregon. That is Mount Hood. And the thing that's neat about when you look at Mount Hood here from South Sister, which, like we saw, is pretty much in the heart of Oregon, we're looking at Mount Hood, which is just outside of Portland. And you know where Portland is. Portland's right there at the Columbia River, and the Columbia River is the borderline between Washington and Oregon. So we're looking all the way to the end of Oregon. Now, some people say, oh, you know what? In the distance, a little ways to the right, I can see another peak very, very faintly. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. Some days I think I can see a shape out there, and some days I don't. But the people that say, oh, I can see that shape to the right in the distance, it's very faint. If they're really seeing it, they're looking all the way into Washington, and they're looking at Mount Adams. Well, before we leave here, I wanted to tell you, I should say, a lot of people, when they climb mountains, not just volcanoes, mountains in general, they like to go and do something to celebrate up at the top. Different people have different things that they want to do. I've even seen a guy, one of the mountains I climbed was at the top. Guess what he brought? He brought himself a giant inflatable Mr. Peanut. And he'd get up there in the thin air, and he'd still go and blow Mr. Peanut up. And he'd blow Mr. Peanut up, and he'd have his picture taken with Mr. Peanut on top of his most recent summit. So what would you bring up here? I saw another thing on this particular trip that somebody had brought up, and I thought it was kind of wild. A didgeridoo. And this unusual horn was brought up by this guy. Now, it's not a light guy. This is not a light horn. It's not made out of balsa wood. But it actually is kind of heavy from my understanding. Would you bring one of these guys all the way up here just to play your didgeridoo? Well, I think now that we've watched him, he's gone to all the work of bringing it up here, I think we ought to listen to him play. So would you have lugged that horn all the way up to the top of this mountain for a solo performance? I wouldn't have. I had enough trouble making it with the stuff I had to carry. But you know what? If he wasn't causing any trouble with it, he wasn't littering, doing any damage, gave him a good time, more power to him. My friend wanted to walk out onto the crater rim a little bit, and as you can see, the rock is very, very steady there, but you don't want to get too close in case you do take a misstep. You're pretty much done for if you do. Let's look around. The magnificent view of being on top of South Sister. There's the crater rim. Like we talked about, volcanoes do whatever they want. Look at the crater rim. Look how far it drops down. all the way down there, and there's that big ice field. And there are people crossing the ice field, heading down to where we came up. We're on the opposite side. And there's the other crater rim. Well, crater rim on the other side is a more proper way to say it. And there's some people hanging out. Okay, here's my quiz for you. See, it's kind of weird as I look at this picture again. I'm wondering, do you really see all the way into Washington or not? I kind of do, kind of don't. Anyway, got a question for you. How many lakes do you see in this picture? Well, I'll give you a couple seconds to figure out how many lakes you see. You ready? Here we go. Two easy ones on the left. But the third one from the left is real tiny. You barely see them. Then there are two more in the foreground on the right with the arrows pointing at them. And then the highest one up, or the furthest one away, I should say, looks like a heart on its side. But of course, I didn't put the arrow near the seventh one. The seventh one is touching the right side of the screen. That is our one with the silt in it, that funny colored one. So 7 lakes all in one picture. And then guess who I saw as I started to head back across the ice? Is this a happy dog? Thornton was a very happy dog. You can hear the ice crunching under my feet. So, time for us to head down. We look in the distance down to the south. Spectacular view. There's that lake where we parked way out there in that green mess. We're not as far away as the lake. We're a little bit closer than that, but that's about how far we have to head down. Mount Bachelor, that snow-capped one, to the left of the lake, and closer to us, over to the left, that is Broken Top. Something else we have to remember as we head down. I remember that old adage a mountaineer taught me a long time ago. It's a great thing to remember. We made it to the summit. And how far have we gone? We've gone halfway. That's it. We've only gone halfway. As he said, when does your successful summit finish? In the parking lot at the car, because it doesn't count if you kill yourself on the way down. Sadly, more accidents happen on the way down than they do on the way up. And so we got to be extra careful. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of the reasons I'll mention to you right now, you're tired already. I've already climbed 5,000 feet. I'm tired. It's more likely I'm going to make a mistake. Another reason is that momentum. If I trip, if I trip on the way up, what am I going to land in? I'm going to land in front of me into the mountain. And what am I going to do? I might scrape my arm, I might bump my knee, I might jam my wrist. I'm going to be unhappy, but that's what's going to happen. If I trip on the way down, gravity is going to carry me for a worse fall, regardless of if I start rolling or not. But you start rolling, then you're in even worse trouble. But you've got to be careful. The fall's going to be worse if you trip on the way down. And then an even additional problem, and that is your own psyche. Because what did we say we were going to do today? We all got together and said, we're going to watch a neat, fun adventure up to the top of South Sister. And we made it to South Sister. And it's great. But the trick is that a lot of people, and it's easy to do, your brain goes to sleep. Or I already made it to South Sister. I'm just going to slog my way in, and you stop paying attention and you make a mistake and you get hurt. So let's be careful while we head down. Listen to the wind. Like we've talked about, it tends to get more windy as the day goes along. Hot air starts rising, get more wind. but the view is no less spectacular. Can anybody guess why I took this picture? Well, I hope you all know me by now. I took this picture because of that little yellow spot right in the middle of the red. That flower just impressed me so much. Think of his world. He's up here all year long. We've talked about it before. I can't get over it. I keep saying it over and over again. This is his life, you know, and it's a spectacular little flower right there, and all that lava, all that hard lava. We get down here to this pretty little lake. What an unusual color it has. And I think the reason it's got the color, well, I'm pretty sure the reason it's got its color is because of that funny looking patch of ice up to the left. I'm not sure it's a glacier, but my guess is it's a mini glacier. And we remember what glaciers are. They're super hard ice. They are harder than the ice in your freezer. They've been compacted for years and years and years. And our world is constantly shaking and vibrating. And that super hard ice moves and jostles and scrapes against the rock underneath it. And when it scrapes against the rock, it goes and it grinds off tiny, tiny, tiny little particles. And those tiny, tiny little particles get in the seepage, drain into the lake. Once they get into the lake, they are so light, they don't sink. They don't float. They just kind of suspend there in the water. And those jillions of little particles are called rock flour. And they are what give the lake its unusual color. So now you can go somewhere, if you happen to be in the Canadian Rockies or somewhere and you look at a lake with a funny color like that, you can look at the person next to you and say, well, of course, it's a glacially fed lake. So that's how you tell it's a glacially fed lake. Wind is sure kicking up, don't you think? It's kind of funny because then you say, I have to still go all the way down there? Well, somebody else is admiring the lake too. Our friend. You remember who this guy is? This is our friend, the Golden-Mantled ground squirrel. Having a nice little afternoon. And I had to take another picture of flowers. You're never going to watch a presentation from Doug without me taking a picture of every flower I can see on the way. Look how that guy's growing out of all those boulders. Well, I have to tell you a story. Some years ago, I was doing a presentation. I stopped at the end and I said, any questions? And a gentleman in the back stood up, he raised his hand, he said, you know what I think? He said, I think you're a big fake. He said, you know what? You've just taken these pictures, you got them off the internet, you make up some stories, and then you say you did it. So I thought about that and I said, okay, from now on, every time I go to the mountains, I'm taking my picture at the top. So here's my picture at the top. There's middle sister, there's north sister, and the other one's in the distance. And a very, very nice trip for us. Well, one last thing before we finish. We talked about how some different people, not everybody, like to have different ways to celebrate. So the one guy, he brought up his didgeridoo. I talked about the guy that brought up Mr. Peanut. Had another guy would go down and get ice cream. I remember talking to him. I didn't see it. He said he'd get ice cream every time he climbed a mountain. He'd climbed a ton of them. And he'd go and take his ice cream carton from the store, and he was building a giant, giant wall of ice cream cartons in his room. So everybody has a different way. But when I was here, I saw the best celebration of the summit ever, and I wanted to show it to you. This is how to have a good time. Is that a great way to celebrate? I'm so jealous of him. Well, there's our adventure to South Sister. Thank you very much for coming. Stay well, and I'll see you soon.